One Phat Teacher.
One Phat Teacher, sir.
Take one.
Take one.
We're here for the first sitting.
Yeah, man.
It's a little bit of a knock up, but we'll be all right.
Look, everything's got to start somewhere.
Exactly. And what was it that brought you to having to start on a podcast?
We'll get into it. I have quite a weird business that has a really cool philosophy that is not something that can be put into a 5-second soundbite. So I just want to. I'm working on a book at the moment called, like Life Observations of a Fat Nerd, and it's just.
That's your title? That's a working title.
That'll probably be the title.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Or,
I like that.
One Phat Teacher. Like that's why I chose One Phat Teacher. Like
Yes.
I am a fat teacher, but I've done enough.
You're pretty cool too.
But I've done enough random jobs that people deem to be cool. I guess you could classify me as fat, PH fat,
PH fat.
PH
that's right.
fat.
Yeah, and that's our lovely logo that
That's
we
right. I keep
knocked up.
forgetting this is video. Yeah. Yeah. We've got a beautiful Mark Ratz print in the background
Yes.
as well. Mr. Mark Ratz, he's a Lucasfilm artist, and he's the Grand Master of the Sons of Obi-Wan. I haven't even released that video yet, actually.
Yeah, yes.
So, we've got to.
That was the day I met him.
It was, yeah. So
That'll be fun.
He's an amazing dude.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very cool. So yeah, we pulled together his likeness.
Yeah, so that picture of me was done by Mark Ratz. I was talking more about the Blade Runner.
That's
at
right.
the top, but
that's right. But we've got the dual action.
Yeah, the whole the Mark Ratz East Coast Gallery as opposed to the East Coast Gallery at the Temple.
That's right.
Yeah.
So yes, the book working title was One Phat Nerd. Or did you say?
Life Observations by a Fat Nerd.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's just. I've led a very random and interesting life, and I've learned a lot of stuff along the way. And being a natural teacher, like I'm a qualified teacher and worked in the school system and stuff, but I've always considered myself a teacher, and I there's just a lot of lessons and tricks and tips that I've learned to get me here and get me past what happened in the past, and I want to weaponize it in a good way and show other people how to use it, because it's not a Tony Robbins course.
It's not like some structured, we're going to do this and that, and
just about getting to know yourself better, you know, because it's know thyself. Was that Socrates? I can never remember. It was Socrates, wasn't it? Know thyself?
Maybe.
Or Aristotle?
Might have been Aristotle.
Might have been. I don't know. I'm a history teacher, but I don't do anything before 1900.
Right.
I like documents and stuff.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just that ability to be able to learn vital life skills that aren't taught in the school system, and it's not life skills like balancing a checkbook. It's in how you view life and how you treat yourself, and how you, because if you allow yourself to be yourself, because like a lot of drama in people's lives is trying to be something that they're not. If you get comfortable in your own skin, that's a win.
That's exactly
everything
right.
flows from that. Yeah.
Well, that's why we've become such good friends.
Absolutely. So
I really adopt that from, in my life, but you reinforced it. So
yeah, it's it's that's why we're doing this as a podcast. There's a lot of sort of background and philosophy to get into, but it's time to share it, man. Like I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and this all disappears. Right. At least. Look, I smoke heavily. Yeah. I'm overweight. But
you'll outlive everyone.
No, look, I don't know. I may be the Keith Richards cockroach, but you never know. So I just want to share all the life lessons I've learnt doing the Sons and in my greater life to try and make it easier, and so everyone else can enjoy their lives.
Yeah. Well, just in terms of where we are here today.
Yeah.
You and I met on Les's podcast, which was
correct. Yeah, the art of conversation.
The heart of conversation.
That's right.
It was the art originally.
It was the art, but you changed it. We'd probably better explain the Sons
Start
first.
from there.
Yeah, so I used to be a school teacher back in the day. Loved the kids, loved the teaching.
And it was history.
I was a history teacher that got stuck teaching English for 6 years. Like, I'm a terrible English teacher. I'm not a fan of Shakespeare. I don't do poetry, but because I was a behaviour and learning support teacher, so I was working with a lot of kids that were at low reading levels, like year 4, year 5 reading level, and year 9. So I did, instead of poetry, I did music,
Yeah.
Instead of books, I did graphic novels. So it's a form of literacy.
Yes.
And they're still reading, but
you're giving them something that they are more
context.
interested.
Look, context is a word you'll hear me use consistently because everything's nothing without context.
Exactly.
I found a list of things in my head that I felt kids weren't getting in the system and needed, but I wasn't able to teach those things. I was too bogged down by the curriculum and working in a system that the school system is really in a bad state of flux at the moment. I've still got friends that teach, and I sort of saw the wave coming, and I realised that if I kept working in that system, like it took me 10 years to do uni to be a teacher, and I only survived 6.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because I was burned out. It was just I was going to end up with a murder charge because of the idiocy in the school system, that it was just constant busy work that doesn't achieve anything,
bureaucracy,
being an English teacher, all the NAPLAN stuff. We talked about that in the podcast we did last time, where, NAPLAN is a thing that it's supposed to be a way for parents to know where their kid is in relation to everyone else and whether they're above or below average and stuff. But it's become a status symbol for schools. Yep. So instead of it being something that should be about the student, it's become about the schools, and they don't want anyone to make the school look bad or any of that. And it was driving me nuts. And
most teachers would be intelligent enough to know that, but a lot of people just get on with it, and they don't deal with it they should.
I come from a place of privilege in that I got an inheritance from my mum. That's what I used to do this business. If I hadn't done that, I still would have been a teacher, but I would have been a miserable man, just because the system would have broke me.
Yep.
Because you
get stuck in. People get stuck in, and
you can only be Sisyphus and push the rock up so many times before everything gives out. And so I decided to try and find a way of engaging people in self-discovery and life skills through something that's fun. So I created a business called the Sons of Obi-Wan. We're a lightsaber theatre combat school, and we teach. It's taken me 8 years to get to this point. What I thought it was going to be and what it is two very different things.
Yeah, that's always the way.
But what we do today is we teach cognitive and dialectical behaviour therapy through theatre combat to adults, kids, special needs, and those with autism. And we're a touring company. We tour all over Australia doing conventions and travelling and hanging out with celebs, and
you do parties and everything.
Weddings, parties, bar mitzvahs. We did a Bucks night last weekend.
That's right.
It's one of those things that it's a fun activity. You can walk away and learn something as well. Because I'm a teacher, everything's got to be a lesson in some way. As a discussion with your wife tonight proved, I'm always trying to teach whether people want to know it or not. Nothing bad, but just discussing personality types and how things, how people deal with things and all that sort of stuff. And we make sabres, and
you make great sabres.
Yeah, we're Australian-made sabres.
Yes,
but it's not
handcrafted,
handmade, all done on the Central Coast, all done by small business,
and virtually indestructible.
Yeah. So it's been one of those, and it's been really interesting as well, because the philosophy we're talking about, the you suck philosophy.
Yeah.
When you're doing something new, you suck. Okay. You'll hear me talking about this a lot. And it's building resilience and giving yourself permission to fail and learn. Like, failure is only a failure when you don't learn something. And it's just been applicable to everything. We can do corporate bonding. We've done stuff for movies.
That's right.
We do live shows. We work with schools, at-risk youth, special needs. Everyone needs to learn the same lessons, and the beauty of our system is we can scale it from moderate global developmental delay up to gifted and talented, teaching the same thing. It's just the amount of detail that goes into it. And you guys,
and it keeps growing,
dude. Yeah, it's just like this blob thing that flops along and absorbs things and becomes things and drops things.
But you can't avoid taking credit for the way you promote yourself.
Oh, look,
you're very good at it.
Yeah, but I'm only good at it because I've been a DJ for 33 years as well, and I've been promoting DJing gigs since I was 15 years old. It's just, but all the promotion, it's not anything clever. It's just doing it old school. You can either splash a heap of money and get on the back of a bus and get everyone to know who you are, or you do the work, do it old school, build the networks.
That's true, but
people.
I'm more referring to how well you interface with celebs and stuff, and you've got some really good connections.
Yeah, but you see, again, that's because I worked in the music industry for 30 years.
But I mean,
meeting celebs is
I think in the future, you've banked so much credibility.
Goodwill, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
because a lot of people don't even realise how far that goes.
So the celeb thing, we tour with a Supernova Comic-Con and gaming around Australia. We do at least 5 of their shows every year. I'm hoping to do 5 this year. And of course, they have celebs at them, and we're lucky enough to be able to get to present sabres to actors and people. We love people that have. The sabre presentations are just to people that have had effect on my life, because I had a rough childhood, and movies and music were my escape. These people saved my life. Like the Tamura Morrison that played Boba Fett and Jango Fett, and was Jake the Muss in Once Were Warriors. When Once Were Warriors came out, I was at my angriest. I'd had a rough childhood and I hated life and hated who I was. And I watched that movie and I saw myself up on screen. I thought, if I keep going down this route, I will be it doesn't mean I'm going to be a large drunk man beating people up in a bar, but just that.
It's the same
trajectory. You know.
It's understanding all that trauma.
And because of that movie, I pivoted onto the path that brought me to here today. Pop culture's had a huge effect on me. When I did uni, I did a double major in English and history through popular culture and movies and comics and books and just everything.
And of course, Star Wars.
Oh, and of course, Star Wars. Movies in general, Star Wars.
You're across a lot.
Yeah. I'm actually, sci-fi wise, I'm actually a bigger Dune fan than I am Star Wars, but that's because of the book.
That's right.
The movie was phenomenal. The battle pug was the greatest thing ever invented. When Gurney Halleck, Patrick Stewart's running off into the desert with a little pug in the middle of a battle, that rocked my world. But it's just. When I was teaching, because I was doing behavioural and got a crash course in special needs, because all the special needs kids ended up in behavioural classes because no one knew how to deal with them.
Yeah.
I had, being an English teacher, I had a bookcase full of books, and half of the books were Star Wars, and I just noticed so many kids on the spectrum were into Star Wars. So I thought, that's my end. The funny thing about the business, I could make it a Lord of the Rings business. I could make it once you understand how to teach, you can teach anything using anything, you know, but it's just Star Wars is my jam, it had a huge impact on me as a kid. My DJing name's Master Yoda, when I was teaching every May 4th, I get dressed up in my robes. I'm a passionate fan. I mean, don't get me wrong, the business has knocked that out of me a little bit, just because I don't have to sink into the movies anymore because I'm living it every day. So it's a bit of a different relationship. Still love it.
That's right.
You do anything for long enough. I love music, but I could not even tell you the amount of music I hate because of DJing. Because it's when it becomes a job.
When it becomes a job,
it's part of it. I still love it, but it's interesting. I have a really different connection to it now, because I obviously back in the day was a hardcore fan, but over time it's actually developed as a teaching tool for me. So when I'm watching movies, I'm enjoying them and watching them, but I'm always, that's a good influence. I can pick that. You know. But
when you get to Comic-Cons, or conventions, there's a kind of level of expectation on you in some ways, like that certain things or stuff. But I mean, that's the business side. That's what you mean, isn't it? When you say, I've got to know stuff.
It's not, part of it, but it's also, how can I explain it? It's actually a really interesting relationship, because I still love it. Also, I've been a media intaker for my whole life, and that's not just movies, that's books, right. That's everything, And so over time, don't get me wrong, I'm way excited for Ahsoka. I am just pumped for that. That's going to be phenomenal. But most of the time I'm looking at it more as a, not business as in woohoo cash, but more of a, that's interesting, what can I take from that?
Yeah, and how it plays along.
how it plays along with what I'm doing and how people view the world, and
because that was the interesting. Like as an example, you had initiated the use of the gaffy stick.
Absolutely, yeah.
And then Book of Boba Fett came out.
Yeah, well, it was sort of one of those things.
That was coincidental.
Yeah, but I'm in a bit of the same boat as Star Wars itself is that it's all about lightsabers, and that's cool, but lightsabers are actually a really limiting weapon for theatre combat and to make exciting fights.
Yeah.
And so you start digging around for other stuff. We were doing it more as a Japanese staff style.
Yeah.
But as soon as that happened, Tam Morrison did it using Taiha, which is a New Zealand weapon.
Yes.
So as soon as we saw that, then we started going, all right, we'll go and learn Taiha, So then we just learn all our stuff off videos. We're hoping to find someone that can teach us properly. Maybe one day Tam will show me some stuff at a con. That'd be lovely. But it's just sort of, it's not coincidence as such as we're just both hitting like Disney and us. I'm not saying we're Disney, but it's just more we're sort of, they've been doing lightsabers for about the same, because I started the business 6 months before Ep 7 came out. So I've grown up alongside the Disney Star Wars. And as I said, there's only so much lightsaber stuff you can do. Like, why do that when you can use vibro knives and axes? And that's because that makes really exciting fights, and it's a good storytelling thing. And, there'll always be sabers in Star Wars, but like, for example, because we use theatre combat to teach, when you do Balintawak, it's great because it's all up close. Like it's essentially a hand-to-hand style. And so for people that are uncomfortable being in other people's spaces, it's a really good, because when you're fighting longsword...
it's a developmental thing.
No, the distance is almost 1.5 meters away from the person. So that's quite a good comfort bubble.
Yes.
Whereas when you come into something like...
You break that down.
You break that down, and it's very in your face, and you've got to work with people.
And that's developmental for them.
That's all developmental for them. So whilst Balintawak is an extremely sexy style, it's the same style they use, the same fighting style in Dune. That's why I was so excited when Dune came out, because I'm like, oh, I know that. I did that for 5 or 6 years, about 10 years ago. It's a really obscure martial art. But again, like that's what I mean. Even my relationship to martial arts has changed. Like, I've done 20 years of martial arts across 6 or 7 different styles. But it's like, don't get me wrong, I can still defend myself, but it's not a thing of defense. It's not a combat thing anymore.
Yeah,
for
it's
me.
a defense.
It's a teaching tool, and in embedding good defensive technique in there, so that my students have good muscle memory. That if it's ever needed, they know how to block something.
Yeah.
But it's not giving them the false sense of security that I know how to fight. So that's that Jedi mind trick again.
That's right.
Like, I'm not teaching you self-defense, but I'm actually teaching you self-defense, but it's just I'm not letting you know, so that, like, we had a student, Jesse, one of our ex-instructors, Jesse. The problem I've got with this business, I'm a martial arts nerd, right? I grew up watching... when we were down at Melbourne Supernova, we walked into this Chinese restaurant to get some dinner. It was like old school Chinese barbecue, dead animals hanging in the window.
Yeah.
And Dylan walked in and tripped over a box and nearly knocked a whole table over, right? And there was this Chinese family coming out, and it was like grandma, mum, dad, and kid. And we had our lightsabers as walking sticks and stuff. And they sit there and go, oh, what do you do? What's with the sticks? And we go, oh, we teach lightsabers. And because they're into martial arts, they're like, what do you teach? And we're like, oh, okay, we teach this and we teach that. And they're like, I said, I just started dropping old school Hong Kong movie titles. And they're like, you know them. I'm like, dude, Kung Fu Hustle is one of the greatest martial arts. I don't know. Have you ever seen it? The one with the landlady with the thongs and stuff? Oh, you'll have to watch it.
I think I know the one
brilliant.
You mean. Yeah.
But again, that same thing. It's not like, I'm not like martial arts sick destruction. Yeah. It's capitalizing on those people's passion for it and turning it into a learning opportunity using theatre combat. So it's been really interesting. My relationship to a lot of my passions has changed, and it's not, change isn't a bad thing. Like, I still enjoy it. Yeah. But you just end up coming at it from a different angle and looking at it in a different way. And that's what happens as you grow. Like,
that's right.
I've read the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying 10 times, and I'm well overdue. I'm actually well overdue. I haven't read it for about 5 or 6 years, but it's one of those books that every 2 or 3 years I'd read it. And that 2 or 3 years of life experience would show me another level.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things that, like, I'm turned 48 a couple of weeks ago. Like, I've been doing this for 8 years now. Of DJing forever. And so it's because my life has been that varied and weird. It's for example, with work, most people define themselves through their job. Like my beautiful partner, Amanda, she and I have been together for 18 years, mother of my daughter, is going through some stuff at the moment because she's been a nurse for 28 years and she can't be a nurse anymore. And the thing is, she's been Amanda Herring nurse for 28 years. And so it's really interesting seeing her trying to redefine herself without that. Whereas with me, I've worked 40 jobs. I worked 3 jobs and did uni my whole life. So it's made me form a core of me that happens to be a lightsaber instructor or happens to be
and
a
that's
DJ.
Where you define what you do.
That's it, you know, and that's the skill because once you get comfortable in your own skin and you know who you are and you know why you react the way you do, everything in life gets easier because it starts tuning out all the. That's what cognitive behavior therapy is. It's restructuring thought patterns, you know, and it's just one of those things. Like that is a brilliant skill. Like we were talking just before we started this, and there's something I've learned. I've said it for years, but I truly understand it and live it now. Is that everything's same?
Yeah.
You know, like the example I've been using the last couple of days. My daughter's a dancer, and she's she's been a performer since she was 6 years old. Like she does, 10 or 12, professional gigs a year and does the Stedfords, and she just started in her first amateur production.
Yep.
And she was she was pretty comfortable with it until the day, and she started getting really nervous. And I said, "What are you nervous for?" And she goes, "Oh, it's my first time." And I went, "How many times have you been on a stage?" And she goes, "It's thousands." And I went, "So what's the difference?" It's same, but different. Even though the specifics have changed, like you have a larger role and that sort of thing. You can do this. And that's that cognitive behavior therapy. Instead of letting your head spiral, having confidence in yourself and stepping back and looking at it for what it is. And she did very well because she was a professional, because she does this 16 hours a week. She gets paid to do it. But when you're buried in the day-to-day, you don't notice that as you go along. And if you don't notice that, then you can't use it.
Yeah, you know.
And so, it's all these little things. It's not a great philosophy. It's not...
But you apply that to sons.
Yes.
To the kids. To the students.
Yeah.
So how, take us through a basic.
Okay. So same but different, right? I was talking, we had one of the local high schools come in and do school sport today, and I was talking to one of the teachers there. And he was watching the kids doing spins, and he said, it's really funny, the motion's exactly the same as what a hammer is. You don't be tight, you relax, let the weapon do the work, all that sort of stuff. And I went, that's exactly right. The philosophy is, whatever you're using, if you let the item do the work, that's the way it's supposed to be. And whether that's sword work, cutting with a knife, filing, sharpening, cutting, all of that, like I do leather work, right? And if you press too hard and try and get it done in one go, the ruler will inevitably slip. Whereas if you just keep it light and let it run, it may take two or three cuts, but it's a clean cut because the knife's doing the work, not you.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by same. There's a lot of skills that people have gathered over the years that they don't realise are in there. And so every time they encounter something new, they go back to the start and learn and feel dumb and all that sort of stuff. But when you start realising that you can teach people skills or you can teach them to learn. If you teach people skills, every time they go to a new job, they have to learn new skills. If you teach them to learn properly and to be kind to themselves and understand it takes 10,000 hours to master something and all of that, you can learn anything because it's all same, but the skills are different.
Yeah.
And it's sounds like a simple idea, but I've been saying that for years, and it's only really kicked in properly where it's in my soul.
Yeah.
In the last year.
And it's a philosophy of the school.
Absolutely. You suck and same but different.
Yeah.
And it's all about just letting you, whatever you're doing, because it doesn't matter if you're starting a new job or starting a new hobby or being a parent for the first time. Being a parent to me was terrifying because I had a rough childhood and I had no scale of reference to what a good parent should be. So that's actually a really
it's
terrifying thing. It's frightening. But, if you take the same thing and just go, I suck at this, and just be aware and be in the moment, and if you make a mistake, make sure you fix it and learn from it, you'll be a good parent.
Yeah.
It's same but different.
That's right.
But as I said, because the brain tends to complicate things trying to help you. If you can get rid of the complications, then everything gets really easy.
Yeah, that's it. What about that second part, the dialectic?
The dialectical, right. So cognitive behaviour therapy is thinking about how you think and changing negative thought patterns. Sounds very hippie, but that's the you suck thing's a prime example.
Yeah.
Because you've been told you suck and it's a negative thing. But if you turn it around to agreeing you do suck, all of a sudden the power's stripped from it, right?
Yes.
So that's how you change it. Dialectical was originally created to work with psychopaths, okay?
Yeah.
And what it was designed for was to help them to manage. So psychopaths, when things don't go their own way, they lose it like hard. Like they're so used to everything going their own way that they don't flex the muscle of learning what to do if it doesn't go the way you want it to go. Yeah. So they have quite extreme emotional reactions to frustration or anger or whatever. So dialectical's more about getting you to understand what the process is, how you get from annoyed to pissed off to angry, you know, so that what happens is it's showing you how to identify the emotions coming up and diverting them off and understanding that it's all right, you know. So the business has always done the cognitive behavior therapy. I sort of accidentally created the dialectical by doing it.
Yeah.
And then I had a psych pop in and go, what you're doing is dialectical. And I'm like, no, it's not. And she goes like, yeah, it is. You just haven't, you know, it's not, it just naturally evolved in the creative process of the business. But it's just all about being kind to yourself. That's the core message. But you can't say that because it sounds too hippie.
Right.
You know what I mean? You know, like it's a bit like, oh, you got to be kind to yourself. You're a goddess. It's not that. It's understanding your own limitations and understanding that you're human and you will make mistakes. And as long as you learn from the mistakes, that's the win.
Yeah, not allowing the emotions to take charge.
Absolutely. You know, and it's like these are all skills that should be taught in school.
Yeah,
you know, but the problem is they're so buried in ticking boxes and you know, what needs to be taught and what's this. But they're teaching them all of this disjointed information.
Yeah.
But they're not teaching them how to be learning humans and good humans and self-reflective humans, you know.
Yeah, I mean, if you map the two characteristics, which is this rise in emotionless teaching and no care for those dialecticals.
Yeah, but you see, that's burnt out of you.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like it maps almost inversely exactly the high rates of ADD and all these kids just suffering. They can't really cope.
But you see, a lot of that comes from the home too, because we're Gen Xers. We were the latchkey generation, so we didn't know what good parenting was. Like I came from a single parent household, and it's one of those things that when you sit back and sort of look at it, that everyone's time poor. We've got a credit crunch, so everyone's got to work 2 or 3 jobs.
Yeah,
and so it's become a thing where the attitude has been, school will teach you everything you need to know, because, you know, some people don't have the capacity to teach it to their kids at home. Like, you know, being a cognitively aware parent is very hard work. You know, if you want to truly make sure you can be the best parent you are, you have to be watching what you're doing. And because often the stuff that does damage is the stuff that's the throwaway comments. You know, it's not like parents are like, oh, you know, like my mum actively tried to destroy me. That's a different beast. But most of the damage is done in throwaway comments or parents being so wrapped up in their own stuff that
just not giving any attention.
Just not giving attention. Maybe they don't know how to give the right attention. You know, like it's a lot, you know.
Degenerates.
I was lucky being a parent because I just finished a teaching degree. That's that's why I'm a great parent to a teenager, but I wasn't great with a baby because I'm trained to be like, you know, I hit my stride when she hit about 5. That's when I was like, right, you know, still there, still loved her, still worked, but, you know, I had that over most people in that at least I have a good idea of adolescent psychology and children's psychology and how they see things and importance of discipline. Kids need rules, no matter how much they kick and scream against it. They operate best when they have a framework. You know, and that's a hard battle.
Yes.
You know, like in this day and age with all the distractions and, you know, all that sort of stuff, it's a hard battle. So these kids aren't whether it's conscious or subconscious, they're not getting the support at home. They're not getting the support at school.
Yeah.
The parents may not have the energy to do the support because they're working 2 jobs to make sure they've got a roof over their head. You know, it's this whole culmination of all these different parts, and the school system's breaking down, and the school system doesn't support teachers. And so, you know, like the average career of a teacher at the moment, new scheme teachers, is 6 years. You know, like you
too many people that I know
don't even know what you're doing in 6 years. You know what I mean? You know, and you're just thrown into a classroom and you're given no support, and you're expected to do all the paperwork, and you've got, you know, I also didn't start teaching until I was 33, so I had life skills that most people, like, I'd been working in nightclubs for 20 years. After working in a nightclub full of drunks with weapons, school's not that scary, but if you haven't been in those situations, I know how to deal with conflict without resorting to violence, because drunk people are essentially teenagers. They revert to their teenage self. So if you can handle a drunk, you can handle a 16-year-old. And it's just diversion and this, you know, and when I say discipline, it's just being a man of your word, and if I say this, I will follow through, and that's not a threat. It's just, if I say to you, if this is the action, it's structure. I'll you know, when I was teaching, I would have a 3 warning rule. First warning was polite, second was neutral, third was right. Okay, let's crack it. But they knew they had 3. So the kids that needed to push could go to 2, feel like they got one over you, but you win because they didn't get to 3. You know what I mean? And that's. You don't know that stuff when you're 22 years old and fresh out of, you know, so as I said, I would have survived the system fine, but I would have been so
miserable,
jaded, and not at the kids, at the system, you know, and I would just.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I've known a number of people that became teachers, and they all lasted less than 6 years.
Because there's no support, you know, and then, like, for example, because all the teachers pulled out now, and everyone's heard what a terrible job is. There's no teachers coming through. There's schools around here, I won't mention names, where every period there's 5 or 6 classes just sitting out in the quadrangle on their phones because they physically don't have enough teachers to have a teacher in every classroom. And then you wonder why the kids are screwed up. And we've had the pandemic, and we've had isolation, and, you know, this generation's going to be, a good whack of them are just going to be a wipeout. You know, it's we talk about it all the time. Hard times make hard men. Hard men's to make soft times. Soft times make soft men. And I just use men because that's the quote. It's not. That's what the quote is. I can't remember who said it. But it's just that idea of we're in the soft times. At the moment, you know, and what that means is the kids haven't been prepared the way they should be because of pandemics and financial cost and the breakdown of the family unit. And, you know, used to take a village to raise people. Now it's 2 or 3, you know, 1 or 2 individuals just trying to survive and raise a kid as well, you know. And it's, like everyone's going, the pandemic's over. We haven't even seen the effects of the pandemic.
That's right.
That stuff will be coming
especially
out in the
with
next
the kids.
10 years. Oh, dude. You know, and you know, they're in a world where they know they're not going to own a house. And like, again, us being Gen Xers, we grew up with the spectre of nuclear destruction. So we're pretty used to staring into the void. You know what I mean? But we've had, what, 7?
I remember as an 8-9-year-old arguing with Dad about the Cold War.
Absolutely. You know, and kids don't even know that these days. But it's one of those things that, you know, it wasn't fun. It had its ups and downs as well. But
to put it in context, right? All those people that were absolutely freaked out by COVID. Well, that's nothing on Cold War. The fear of 12,500 nuclear weapons going off.
But you see, it's a funny fear because that's a genuine fear. Like there was a movie called The Day After that came out in about 1984, and it showed the first 4 days, and that traumatized me like the AIDS ad did in the 80s. You know what I mean? But it's just the challenges today are different, and it's a different sort of dread. Like it's really not funny, but it's interesting because there's this spiral of they'll get an idea and then it goes to the negative, and then they see something on TikTok that makes it worse. And so they're constantly going down these little death
and the
spirals.
algorithms don't help.
The algorithms absolutely don't. Like, that's what I mean. It's such a complicated problem.
Yeah.
But you can't fix the world. But what you can do is help to try and fix individual worlds, and maybe you will see that spread out into the greater world. You know,
well, that is my philosophy too.
Absolutely.
The world actually is only based on each and every individual and the status of their life. I mean,
I'm a big fan in you create your own reality.
Yes.
You know, and
that's it.
You know, like, I run a lightsaber school, but that's a reality I've created by getting the skills I needed to do it and working hard to build the business so that I've got a world that works for me, and I like my world. I work with interesting people, and I've got a good support network at work, and because I've set my world to be that way.
Yeah.
You know, and people don't understand it's actually quite simple to take charge, but it's terrifying because you've got to step into the unknown. Like, dude, I have done some stupid stuff over the years, and not stupid as in speeding cars down highways and stuff, but stupid like opening a saber school. That's just so dumb on paper.
On paper?
But, you know, I knew that with my skill set, I could give it a good shake. I couldn't guarantee it'll work, but my gut told me.
But that's what makes you a unique person too.
Oh, but you know how I said I've worked 3 jobs and done uni almost my whole life? I've lived 3 lifetimes. Like, I'm 48 with 47 years music experience.
And you've still done some gigs in recent
times? Yeah, I'm still mixing. I'm actually doing a demo next week for a Central Coast house podcast.
Yep.
You know, but it's one of those things that, because I've done so much, I've just learned at 3 times the speed of normal people, because I've done 3 times of the amount of crap. You know, like, as I said, like, I'm 48 with 46 years music experience, because there's 33 years of DJing in there. There's working in recording studios. There's, you know, but it was because I was working in HMV, like an old music store, full time. I was DJing 4 nights a week. I was working in a recording studio once a week. So there's, you know, 70, 80, 90 hours worth of experience every week.
Every week. Most
people do 40 and die.
Yes.
So that's what I mean. Like, it's not that I'm clever or anything.
Where was the recording studio?
Silhouette Sound Studios up at Morisset.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I helped him build his sound studio, and we used to do live sound. Like, I used to do the Central Coast Music Festival.
Is he still going?
Yeah. He's still going. Silhouette's, it's not where it used to be, but absolutely. Still, I went up and saw him. Oh, geez. Last I heard, he was doing sounding and lighting for Barry Manilow through Asia. So, yeah, he's still going. But, you know, like, as I said, I worked in music stores, I ran record stores, I DJ, and that's just the music part.
Yeah.
You know, then you get into teaching. I've taught martial arts, I've taught DJing, I've taught English, I've taught history.
Yeah.
You know, so it's one of those things that, just because I love learning and, you know, chasing things and doing things.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. It's not like some magical formula I've developed. It's just I've lived such a full life.
Yeah.
It's given me views that most people don't have. The simplicity of views, because after a while, everything's same but different.
That's it.
You know what I mean? Like when you're on your 30th job, you don't get freaked out about starting somewhere new. You just that's fine. I've just got to learn the new computer system, and I suck. It's fine. I'll learn it when I get there, as long as I make my best effort to learn it. If it takes me a month and I make mistakes, I suck. It's fine. And that's what got me through everything. And it's such a it's very zen. It's an incredibly simple concept, but it's incredibly difficult to actually believe it and live it.
Yeah.
You know, because you have to face your own mortality. You have to face your human. You have to face that you can make mistakes. Like, they're things, people don't like looking inward. They love distraction. No. You know, so they're all big picture stuff that most people just get so buried in the trenches that they never stick their head above the trench to see anything outside of it.
Would you say it's innate that people don't look within? Or do you think it's just the way society has conditioned people?
I think it's gotten easier, because the more there is distraction, the easier it is not to. If you're living out on a farm with no music and no books, you end up with a lot of time sitting on a fence staring into space. Whereas here we can fill all of that space. You know, like, being comfortable with yourself is just being able to sit there.
Yeah.
How often do you just sit there? You know, I make sure every morning when I get up, like I'm very lucky, we've got a house that's got an ocean view, and I get up, and even if it's only for 5 minutes, I sit on my balcony and enjoy the view.
Yeah.
Mindfulness, just being in the moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's all. The problem with any self-help is that eventually it develops into a system that needs to be sold, and there's gatekeepers and that, right? There's none of that here because there's no secret. There is no secret. It's just do the hard work.
Yeah.
I'm here to help you get over the hump, because the more you work on yourself, the easier it gets. Like the way I explain it, when people turn up at the temple, their brain is like a ransacked warehouse. There's just boxes everywhere and bits falling out, and every time you walk down an alleyway, a box falls on your head. If you get yourself in order, like my head is like the end of Indiana Jones. You know, like when it's all in its place. If anything comes up I don't like, I know why and where it's from, and I know where the box is to put it back in.
Yeah.
But that's taken 20 years of hard work, and I think it's more people don't value self-development. We've become a very external culture.
Yeah,
it's houses and cars and how cool are my clothes, and you know,
materialism.
But that's capitalism. You know, and it's you know, this stuff's always been there. It's just there's so many distractions now. You never have to. You're never forced to look inward, because you can always, man. If you're sitting on the crapper. Your phone's going and you're doom scrolling. You know, like people used to go and sit in the toilet and think.
Yes.
No, you're sitting there and you're playing Farmville.
Yeah.
You know, like, so you don't get to spend that time with yourself. So that's why the Saber's good, because it gives you a focus point. This is what we're working on.
Yeah.
Bang. You know. Yeah.
So fascinating.
Dude, it's sort of really hard to start something like this because it's such a big thing. That's why we decided to do the podcast, just because Shawnee and I sit here and have discussions like this all the time and solve the world's problems, but we just thought, like, let's start sharing all the stuff I've learned. And
I think a lot of the podcasts or episodes in the beginning especially will refer back to the sons. But there'll be other things that we'll go on to.
Absolutely, because, dude, this, you know, it's all going to be based around learning and self-development and stuff, but it's just, you know, like we were saying, like I could do a whole podcast for a month on the history of music and you know, talk about the history of house, or we could do history.
Number of podcasts just on military history.
Yeah, you know, just
you love that.
Just I like sharing stuff, so I thought we'd do it live.
The sons and that side that you just mentioned, you know, like that, how you have to focus on something and learn and develop. And I mean, that's reflective of other disciplines like martial arts, obviously.
But it's anything.
That's right. It's on anything. But in the sense that I mean is like your awesome school it makes that kind of thing accessible to.
But you see, we're not a school; we're an academy.
Well, there you go.
But the reason I say that is a school teaches doctrine, an academy teaches you about you.
Yeah, right.
You know, so it's
Saber Academy.
Yes, yes. That's you know, it's very much about. Oh, look, where do we start? We need a start point. I guess, like, I don't know. Do we start about the childhood and get that out of the way, because that's all of this comes from that.
That's right.
Yeah, all right. So I was born in Sydney in 1975. I grew up in a single-parent household with an abusive parent. She was actually a clinical psychopath, functioning psychopath. She worked for 40 years, but of course, being a psychopath, she worked in hospitals and jails where you get lots of power, right? And my mum was a woman that wanted to go and travel the world, and she did what society told her to do and got married and had kids and hated it. And so she punished me for my whole childhood for ruining her life. And it was psychological and it was physical.
When did Dad disappear?
Dad was driven away by Mum when I was about 4 years old and my brother was 2. Actually, no, it must have been 5 and my brother was 1.
Right.
And I was just left in this house with this woman, and it was just all psychological manipulation and beatings and isolation, and I wasn't allowed out of the house, and I only ever went to school and came home, and I had to look after my brother, and, you know, it was a really toxic environment. And what happened was there was trauma in there, but the other advantage of going through trauma is you learn skills to deal with it. And so, you know, I mean, I don't know.
And you have the cognition and the awareness, the self-awareness.
Not most people don't have that.
That's right.
I'm lucky in that I'm stubborn. You know, like my mum had this belief that because I was my father's spawn, I was useless and would never amount to anything. And she was determined to make sure that came true, because that was, being a psychopath, that's how she sees life, and therefore
it's everyone else's.
But but it must be correct because I've stated it. So, and there were all these experiences I went through. Like, I got really good at dealing with pain because I would get beatings. You know, my mum was basically did a psych course, and I did it behind her because I thought all of a sudden the abuse changed really quickly from really crude physical stuff to getting into real, like this happened when mum would have been doing a psych degree when I was about 10 or 11. And look, man, up until then it was a pretty standard crappy childhood, just lots of beatings and whatever. But then when mum started doing psych, everything changed. And it went like, it's that idea you can either punch someone and let them get it over and done with, or you can tell them you're going to, but never tell them when.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's a very different type of abuse, because all of a sudden, you know, but I was trying to work out why, and she started doing a psych degree. So I started reading it, and as I was reading it, I started to recognise what she was doing, and that's what sort of got me through the rest of my childhood. But there were all these skills I learned, like I'm really good at reading people, because every night I had to read my mum and see if I was going to cop a beating. You know, I got, you know, very good at inference and working out why, because I had to work out why something had happened, you know. So I learned all of these sort of skills, but because all I had was the trauma, I focused on the trauma, which is what most people do. There's sort of trauma happens, and then there's a point. It's the denial, anger. It's it's grief, you know, because when a trauma happens, a part of you dies. You know, like you absolutely have to go through the grief process. If it's one event, or if it's thousands of events like mine, it's still sort of same. And I was, by the time I got to 16, I was 6'6", 180 kilos. I was angry. I was, you know, like I'd spent 16 years of my mother just trying to destroy me, my brother joining in. Like, it was really messed up. And but at the same time, I was watching Star Wars, and Star Wars is Buddhism light. You know what I mean? It's that feel the force, be in the moment, you know, get out of your head.
That's right.
And there's two ways, especially with physical trauma, or trigger warnings. I guess we probably should put a trigger warning at the beginning of this. With physical stuff, you can either disassociate and pull away from the pain, and that's when you lock it in a box and it becomes trauma and you never deal with it, or you can learn to dominate it and move through it. And it's that whole fear is the mind killer from June. You know, like eventually, if you take that attitude towards dealing with it, after a while it becomes an intellectual exercise rather than disassociation. And that's a different thing, because that's where you start to learn about you, because you have to learn to control reaction and you know, try and avoid the beating, and it becomes like a game of chess, and it's a very different sort of style of stuff. And so I left home when I was 18. I finished the HSC in 17, and I missed out on what I wanted to get into by 2.25 TER points. So my mum made me go back and do it again. So I went to another school and did my HSC again and got the marks, and went away.
What were you going to go and do?
Marine biology.
Yeah, right.
Just because all I ever wanted to be was a teacher. I wanted to be history. I've been a history nerd since I was 5 years old because of my grandfather. And I wanted to be a history teacher, but teaching something you do when you can't do anything else. And so Mum said, if you're going to do something, it has to be science. And I wanted to be a scuba. I wanted to do scuba diving. I grew up reading Clive Cussler books. Yeah. So I thought, oh well, if I'm going to have to do science, I'll do marine biology. But my heart wasn't in it. It was just a way to get out of my house. You know, like I moved to Armidale, which was 6 hours away.
That was for uni.
That was for uni. Yeah. I went to UNE, and I did a year up there, and I was just failing everything because it was the first time I'd been away from my mum.
Yeah.
You know, like I didn't realise my life was bad until I stepped out of it because I was isolated. I didn't have friends. I didn't go to friends' places. I didn't know what normal life was like. So that was normal to me. And that's when a lot of the anger came.
Were you filling your time with reading and stuff still?
I was locked in my room a lot as a kid. Like when I say I was isolated, like I learned how to pick locks at 13 just because I was sick of being locked in my room. Like my mum would lock me away all the time. Like if I wasn't, you know, and plus I didn't want to be around her either. Like because I didn't play sport. Because if I went out in the world and talked about what was happening at home, docs would turn up.
Yeah.
So mum trained me to be at home. And so when you're home that much, all you can do is read books and build model kits and watch movies. You know, like my mum used to go to bed, and she used to get up early and go to bed early. So as soon as I got my first job, the first day I got a job, my first pay packet, I went and joined Video Easy.
Yep.
And started at A in drama and finished in Z. That's why I've got a head full of useless crap about movies, because it was another escape.
Yeah,
you know?
good. Yeah.
But then after a while, when you watch that many movies, you start seeing patterns, and that's when you start looking behind just being a passive watcher and start becoming an active watcher, and so on and so forth. That's why music and movies and books and all that are such a big part of me, because they were what got me through my childhood. They were my friends, because I didn't have friends. I didn't have my first real friend until I was in year 11.
Yeah.
And that was after I had an incident with my mum, and she freaked out and realised how big I was for the first time and started stepping back, and that's when I started sort of venturing.
So that was not long after that you left home anyway.
Yeah. And I was sort of up there, and I did my first year of uni and just failed. Like I didn't want to be there. I was trying to work out what had happened.
And this is marine biology.
This was marine.
So you were just
science.
not into it anyway.
Dude, it interested me, but not enough to go through organic chemistry. You know what I mean? Like if I didn't have to do organic chemistry, I probably would have stuck with it. But all the books I was reading was history. I wasn't going home and reading marine biology books. You know, I knew a bit about sharks because I saw Jaws when I was 6. But so I did a couple of years out of it, and I just dropped out. And I hit the age when I was like 21, and I realised, because most normal people hit the real world with a rough formation of themselves, and then you polish the turd as you go through life, and that's how you become you. I had no idea who I was, because I didn't spend any time growing. I spent my whole time dodging and weaving and trying to survive each day as it was. And I got on the dole, like, because there was no work in Armidale. And I just went, I'm going to find out who I am. And everything I was ever interested in, I gave it a bash. I did archery for a while, and did bow hunting, and did survival, and I did went and got my scuba diver's license. And started studying. I went and read all the great books.
But you were on the dole, but you had any work?
Oh, I was DJing a couple of nights a week in town.
So you'd started off your DJing there?
Oh, I started DJing when I was 15.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I started jumping out the window when I was 15 and going in town. Summer of Love, 1990, down like very beginning of sort of clubs. And I just hang around the DJ box and jump in now and then. And
that was in Sydney?
That was in Sydney. I used to play at a place called Kinsella's, which is upstairs on Oxford Street. And I used to go down the cross. And
because you were tall, you looked over.
I was bigger than all the security guards. I was 6'6" and 180 kilos. Like, they wouldn't mess with me. And also, this is the era of paper licenses where you could grab anyone's license, and as long as you could remember what your star sign was and what the birth date was,
that's right.
You're generally. But if you're turning up, because like my mum would go to bed at 9, I'd jump out the window at 10. I'd be in town at 12. Be in the club till 5, jump on the night bus home, get back at 6:30, jump in the window and go, morning, and then off I go to school. And so it was just
Did you ever get caught?
No.
She never realised.
Because she thought her dominance was complete, that I would never consider it. Like, does that make sense? Yes. Like, it's the psychopathy thing again.
I know.
He would never do that. Like, she had no idea. I looked tired. I just told her I was staying up and watching movies all night. And she could see I was watching movies because a couple of nights a week I was staying up till 4 a.m. watching movies. And no, like, none of my guys at school knew. I was, because, like, of course, my mum was drug and alcohol counsellor, so I was 15 going at clubs getting offered free drugs. So, you know, they were helping me get through as well. But no one noticed, because I didn't have any friends, so no one would notice the change or the difference. Or, like, you know, I got regular beatings my whole childhood and no one ever noticed. My mum was smart enough to beat me in places that couldn't be seen. And then it went psychological later, so you can't see the scars from that. Like, it was,
but you were resilient enough to not let it.
I was too stubborn to let it win.
Yeah,
I don't know why. It was just I've had this weird stubbornness of who I am and who I want to be. Yeah, always. I don't know why. That's just how I'm wired.
Well, that's what makes you a good teacher too.
To a point.
It's the right kind of empathy.
Yeah. But I mean, that's why I became a teacher, because I know the 1,000 yards. That's why I wanted to be a teacher, because I went through all of that school and no one ever saw the 1,000-yard stare in my eyes. I know that intimately because I saw that every morning when I got up. And that's what made me a good teacher. It's not empathy, it's recognised.
Yeah.
Maz Katana, after a while, all the eyes start to look the same. After, like, I was literally having this conversation at work today. It's not some wonderful wow gift, but it's just when you've dealt with enough people, there's only 3 or 4 things. It's generally trauma, pride, arrogance, and after a while you can see what all the signs to point to whatever it is.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can just see it, you know. And so, and then I read all the great religious books, because I didn't know. I was spiritual, but I didn't know what it was. I like my family are the most Australian family you will ever see outside of Aboriginals. One side came out on the first fleet, one side came out on the second fleet. There was no religion, there was no culture.
Did you reconnect with Dad later?
Yeah, I still speak to Dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, just in case he ever listens, you know. But like, I can still speak to Dad. Like, I'll speak to him 2 or 3 times a year. Like, it's not you know, like, I haven't had family my whole life.
Yeah,
you know, like, I had my mum and my nan and my pop and my brother, but my mum was such a dominant personality that all the stuff with them was all influenced by that, because they were all scared of my mum, so they would just fall in behind her.
Yeah,
and, you know, so.
And you stuck by your brother.
That's a whole nother story. No.
Okay.
My brother my mum trained my brother to be part of my torment. So the most common story I tell is when I was 14, I wanted something. I don't know what it was, but it was like $20. And, like, my mum never spent any money on me. And I'm like, Mum, I want $20. No, you're not, because her favourite thing was to say no. Because if you deny it, she wins.
Yes.
And I eventually stole the $20. And Mum found out, and I was given a beating with the belt, 1 for each dollar I took and 1 for each year I was on earth. And my brother pulled up a chair and watched while it was going on. And my mum missed a count. And my brother went, Mum, you missed one. So she did it all again. Do you get what I mean? So, like, Ryan was another tool. My brother was another tool in her arsenal. And it was, I don't speak to, and, like, as I said, hang on, I've just got to turn my hat around. It's digging into my head. There we go. As I said, I speak to my dad, but, like, most of them are dead now anyway.
But your dad had no real role in that sense. Like, he abandoned her.
No, he knew what she was and he left me there.
Yeah, well, that's not right. That's right.
Yeah, well, no. Like, I'm talking, he walked in on my mum with a pillow over my face and he went, I can't take this anymore, and left. Right, so it's not just he didn't directly have a role, but it all wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, if he had stood up.
If he'd done a different route with that. And that's something I've had to learn to deal with. Like, I look after my dad to a point, like, if he needs me, you know, but, like, he's not mad interested in my life. Like, he still doesn't know what I do. I've had this business for 8 years now. You know, it just, my dad's in his own world, which is cool. Yeah. I've just accepted him for who he is, and he's my dad, and, you know, like, there's not a mad emotional connection there, but, you know, I'm half his genetic material. I should show the man some respect, you know. But I wouldn't have conversations like this with my dad.
Yeah.
You know, like Dad's just not built that way, you know. So, you know, and I mean, so I studied all the great books, and I actually nearly went for Islam. Like, I was real close, but to be honest, I'm too lazy to pray 7 times a day, and I don't want to not eat. Like, seriously, that's a horrible thing to say, but
it's too funny.
But then I came across Buddhism again, and I recognized that's when I recognized it was the Jedi thing, and I got to study it with lamas and stuff up in Armidale, because they've got a large Tibetan population up there because it's so high.
Yep.
Oh, when I say large, it's not massive, but for a little country town, there's a few of them.
Yep.
And that's where I started, because the beauty of Buddhism, it's not a religion, it's a lifestyle. It's how you choose to see the world, and you choose to grow, and you choose to be a positive force. And I really dug that, because it's all about self-knowledge and self-empowerment, and not in a me way. It's just more of that, you know, like, you make sure your karma's good, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you do. And like, people have this weird concept of karma as a punishment thing. It's not. It's whatever you put out comes back. So, you know, like a good Buddhist will respect everyone. And I don't hate many people. I feel sorry for a lot of people.
Yes.
But, you know, but you see, for someone that had hatred in my life for so many years, that was a lesson I needed to learn, you know, like. And then, I got married. I was married for 6 years and separated there, and then met my current partner. And when I was 23, I went back and started doing uni on my own terms and did history, of course, history and English. And then I taught for 6 years, and then my mum died, and I got a random inheritance, and I went, right, this is my chance, and off I went, and the sons began. And then it's just been that now for nearly 8 years.
It's pretty crazy.
Dude, it's wild. Like, I've learned, I started the business when I was 40, and I was like, I'm 40, man. I know myself. I've done so much personal growth.
Yeah.
Because to be a good teacher, you've got to be a good student. You know, and I suck at this. I've run everyone else's business. I've never run my own business before. I've never created a business before. This hasn't been done anywhere else in the world. It's not like you know, you go to someone's cafe and go, I want to do that, and all you got to do is find your suppliers and go. I've had to create this from the start and work out what it's going to be. You had a lot of
hiccups along the way.
Because I suck. I'm learning. You know, like, it's, you know, it's, and like, for the first 3 or 4 years, I was so hard on myself. And I'm in my day job, I'm going, oh, you suck, it's fine, don't worry about it. But it wasn't. Yeah, you know, like, you know, I still had stuff to deal with. Like, I thought my stuff was pretty locked away. But the funny thing with trauma is, once you get it sorted, it'll turn up again when something else happens.
And you got to sort it again.
Yeah, that's it.
And go deeper.
But you see, it's the same but different thing. After a while, when you recognise what it is, you just go, oh yeah, that's it. That's that, you know. And it's been a really sort of crazy journey, but it's been rad. Like, I mean, shit, I'm a lightsaber instructor. Like, that that rocks, you know.
It rocks,
you know. But again, like, that's what I was talking about. This comes back to the One Phat Teacher thing. Everyone's like, oh wow, you're a lightsaber instructor, and I'm like, no, I'm just a teacher that happens to use lightsabers as a tool in my sort of teaching thing. And so, as I said, all the jobs, like, I've been a model builder, I've been a professional model builder, I've worked in radio, I've done, because the way I decide jobs is what's going to interest me.
Yeah, that's,
you know, like, don't get me wrong, I've done a lot of crappy jobs as well, but the reason my whole family was so miserable is because they became who they were by doing what society said to do, as opposed to what they wanted to do. So my life thing was, I'll make sure I always do my best. It doesn't have to, but do my best to try and do stuff that interests me, so that at least if I'm going to have to be a wage slave, I'm going to enjoy it. You know, so don't get me wrong, working in music stores was retail and it sucked.
Yes,
but it was rad because I was sharing my passion with people every day, and, you know, meeting celebs and DJing. I love it dearly, but that's a grind dealing, because also, like, most DJs do 2-hour sets. I would do whole night sets and 8-9-hour sets. So I'm dealing with drunks for 9 hours on 2 hours sleep after working a full day, you know. So, you know, it's really funny with my daughter.
But that's what led you into martial arts too.
Yeah. So the reason don't get me wrong, I love the Karate Kid. Like, I've got Mr. Miyagi tattooed on. Our main logo's Mr. Miyagi. I love that, but I had to deal with drunks.
Yeah.
So all the styles I did were all really, like, don't get me wrong, like I did some karate and stuff, but most of the stuff I did was passive, because when you're dealing with a drunk and you're at work and you're under a video camera, you don't want someone to annoy you and you spin around and smack them in the head.
No.
So I started off, that's why I did Aikido and all those real
Aikido
sort of
was a key
wrist
one for
locky,
that.
absolutely, you know, and then Balintawak, absolutely after that. But and also I was always the biggest dude in the room. You know, like everyone always picks the biggest dude in the room, always. Like I've spent my whole life dealing with small man syndrome, just because when people get drunk, you know, all the anxieties come up and you have a big dude that could literally eat you for breakfast standing in front of you. They want to show their mates how tough they are. And, you know, and that's sort of why I started doing it. But I also really got into the spiritual side of martial arts really early. Yeah. Got into meditation and bonsai and you know, all that sort of stuff as well. So most people tend to do martial arts from a combat perspective.
Yes.
I came at it as a growth tool.
Yeah.
That happened to have some handy side effects. You know, like I wanted to, you know, like it's the same thing with Yoda and with Mr. Miyagi. It's that breathe in, breathe out, breath. Like it's all same but different.
That's right.
You know. But yeah, like I've never graded in anything. I just, because I say this all the time, martial arts is made for 5'5" Asians, and I'm a 6'6" fat man with no ankles. So instead of learning a style, I went and travelled from each martial art. I learned how to kick in Muay Thai. I learned how to do, you know, wrist locks in Aikido. So I'm not a judoka that, you know, knows everything. But as I said, that's the same after a while. After you've done 3 martial arts, it's all same. It's just the what you use to hurt people and where your power comes from changes. But there's only so many ways you can hit someone.
Yes.
You know, so again, that's where the same. So after a while with the martial arts, it was just sort of like, oh yeah, cool. You know, no dissing anyone that does martial art for 20 years. That's rock on, you know, if that's the system that works for you. But I couldn't do it that way. But the other advantage of that's come in when we do the theatre combat now from a theatre combat side, most theatre combatants are famous for doing a style. So all their fights have to be in that style because they're representing their style. The beauty of us is because I don't have a style per se, we can borrow from everyone. Yeah. So it makes it a really fun way to teach theatre combat, because it's like, as I said, like sabres are cool, but sabres get boring real quick because there's only so many ways you can use that type of style with a sword, you know.
And you can be more innovative.
That's it, you know. So, like, it's cool, you know. Like, I love martial arts and I still study them now, but I study it more from a philosophy perspective and teaching my guys to recognise what a martial art is. That's more the stuff now, because the greatest thing I ever did was study intellectually all the martial arts first, because it makes it so much easier in a fight if you can tell what the person's going to do. Because if you do Muay Thai, there's a certain series of strikes that they're going to use, so at least you know. Where, does that make sense?
That's where to defend.
Yeah, you know, like the best way to win a fight is know what's happening before it starts. You know, most people just stumble into a fight and panic and flail and see what happens. Whereas, you know, if you understand fight, like a lot of stuff we teach at work actually in relation to self-defense is fight psychology, because you can get your way. Most people are terrified of fighting. You can talk or bluff your way out of 98% of fights. Yeah. Like, you know, if you know, there's different, you can intimidate, you can distract. Like, distraction's my favorite. Yeah. You know, like, you know, you sit there and, like, one I used on a guy one night was, I was sitting there and he goes, I'm gonna take you out. And I went, how hot's that chick on the poster over there? And he went, oh, what poster? As soon as he's out of the fight mode, because you have to rev yourself up to get into a fight. And as soon as you break out of that mode, you have to rev up again. So we're going to
start over.
That's it, you know. So that's subtle self-defense training, because reading a situation and understanding, you know, reading body language and seeing what's happening and who's egging them on and awareness, being mindfulness, being in the now, you know. It's all useful stuff. I don't know. We're jumping all over the place, dude. It's pretty random.
But at the same time, like, martial arts and good martial arts instructors have always had that as the philosophy, that defense is always the beginning or the source of your strength.
Karate for defense, never for attack.
Yeah, if you can run away, like when I used to do jiu-jitsu, that was one of the key strategies was to find a moment where you can get away.
Do you know why I have to get really good at controlling people? I have no ankles and I can't run.
You don't have
so
the
at
same,
least if I can't run, at least if I can hold them still long enough to diffuse the situation,
or calm it down. That's right.
That's a win for me. But yeah, no, it's you know, like martial arts. Martial arts is saying the same thing that Buddhism is saying. It's just all about, you know, the same as Tony Robbins, the same as all of that. It's just everyone complicates it to make it unique so they can make money out of it. Let's just share the wealth. Yeah. You know, like it's all there. It's all in society, but people
it's very
are just
ancient too.
Absolutely. You know, like
why do we call it martial arts in the West? What do they call it in Asia? Because
it's boxing, like it's still
we've had our own like Western forms of martial arts, which is boxing,
sword,
and there's other
sword
things,
combat
swords and weapons,
but
we use the term, but I wonder what it is in
well, like kung fu in China is boxing. You know, I mean, it's a name's a name. You know,
but what's the martial referring to?
Fighting, because it's sort of really interesting because if you look at most Western martial arts, they are genuine because martial means to fight.
Yeah, right.
So they're genuine martial arts. Like European longsword is useless on the street unless you're walking around with the European longsword, right? Whereas Japan and China had a big, like, so for example, Japan were warriors up until about the 12th century. I'm going to have to reread this. It's all a bit musty, but there was a time, maybe it was the 1600s, when the shogun and everything was settled down, and there wasn't much fighting. And was it Musashi said, "You've got to be a warrior and a poet. You've got to be balanced." And so that was the thing that really attracted Westerners to it, because Eastern martial arts are just for fighting, you know, whereas because of cultural forces, because Japanese culture is all about perfection. They know they're never going to reach perfection, but if you do enough of it, you'll get the closest you can get to perfection. That's who they are as a people. If the Japanese are going to build a car, they build a car, and they build the car to the best of their capability, because culturally that's what sort of Japanese do. And that's something that because, look, man, if you want to get really wanky and philosophical about it, I think it's got a lot to do with the death of religion in the West. And so just after World War II, religion was at its lowest. Everyone had just seen horrors all across the world. Right. And Eastern mysticism provided this nirvana, the possibility of nirvana. That's why the Beatles went to India in the 70s and started learning sitar. You know, I think the West sort of realised that their own, like, they reached such depraved levels in the war that they were looking for something pure. And that idea of you know, yoga is another one, you know. And so, you know, from the 50s onwards, there was this real turn to try and find another form of mysticism. And the reason Eastern mysticism is so good, because it's about self-development and you can see the changes. But if you do the self-development for selfish reasons, it doesn't work. You know, how many people do you know say namaste and think they're down with the sickness? You know what I mean? And so it's, again, the West don't have that stick at it and learn it, you know. Like dude, I know a lot of martial artists that have done it for 20 years and are truly phenomenal, but the Western mind isn't built that way as much as the Eastern mind. So it's very easy to fool yourself into thinking that you've grown and learnt from it, you know. But again, it's still that you've got to have the courage to look inwards. Yeah.
Some of it too had developed in some respects because of caste or class systems, and it was a kind of a defensive you know, like some of the forms and styles and stuff had developed as a sort of a defense.
Yeah, but you see, what's really interesting, so for example, Japanese martial arts, there are very few actual Japanese martial arts left, because there was a period in the 1860s and 1870s called the Meiji Restoration period, where in 10 years, Japan went from being a full feudal society with a shogun and samurai to being a fully westernized corporation-based system. And the first thing they wanted to do was to get rid of the samurai. The first thing they said was samurai weren't allowed to carry. It's the Last Samurai with Tom Cruise.
Yes.
That's the Battle of Satsuma. That was the last hurrah of the Meiji Restoration period. And so what happened was they banned the training of all martial arts because they didn't want samurai anymore. We're a modern nation. That's ancient silliness. Let's get rid of it. So a lot of the martial arts we have today are shadows. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, there will be martial artists out there spewing at me that I'm saying this. I'm not saying their style's bad. I'm just saying if you look at the history, you know, judo, the actual style of the proper style of judo is built for dehorsed samurai to be able to control a battlefield until they can get their hands on a sword. That's why it's all hip throws and stuff. And Japan turned a lot of their stuff into sports to hide the training.
That's right.
I mean, there's a lot of this around the world. Capoeira from Brazil.
Yep. It was.
Screamer and Balintawak in the Philippines is the same thing. So what happens is if there's a regime change, like, so for example, the Spanish invaded the Philippines and the Portuguese invaded Brazil and all those places. And what they did was the local fighters nearly won, so they banned the training of all stuff. So capoeira hit it as a dance. That's why that's that funny Brazilian martial art where they do the spin kicks and stuff. And Screamer and Balintawak turned it into a stick dance. You know, so it's sort of the philosophy has travelled over, but it's weird because the philosophy works best when you're a combatant in a combatant area because that's what it's built to do. Yes, does that make sense? Right. You know, like, and it's sort of really interesting these days. Like, don't get me, there are genuine battlefield styles. Krav Maga, the Israeli Special Forces one. You learn how to rip a throat out in the third lesson, but that's because it's being used on modern battlefields. And if you have some dude coming at you, you got to rip their throat out.
That's right.
But a lot of the sort of the Eastern stuff has ossified into something because a true martial art will evolve because your enemy's always evolving.
That's right.
But when you're not fighting your enemy anymore, that evolution starts to slow down because then after a while you're just teaching the techniques, but the techniques aren't being used in the real world. You know, it's really, like, again, we could do a whole thing on martial arts. It's fascinating where martial arts are and how they've become in the West. And you know, like, for example, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that is absolutely a combat martial art. You know, it was only created in the 50s.
That's right.
You know, from Japanese, you know, judo and jiu-jitsu. But again, same thing. That's because it's made for cage fighting. But even that is a martial art. There's still rules.
Oh, yeah. And it's accelerated so much with so many new sort of applications, I guess you could say, of different concepts. Yeah. So it's ever evolving.
Well, like I've always said, I think the reason a lot of one of the reasons I quit regularly DJing was clubs were just getting way violent. And that's because when I started DJing in 1990, two guys who couldn't fight, one would take a swing at the other, he'd knock him down, they'd be best mates for the rest of the night, and then that's the way it was. But the problem with something like jiu-jitsu, like this is something I've been saying for years, I don't know if anyone thinks the same way I do, but the whole point, if you're doing in a jiu-jitsu match, you ground and pound until the ref pulls you off.
Yeah.
But if there's no ref in the real world, when do you stop?
Yeah,
Does that because your muscle memory is to keep going until you get pulled off. But the problem is if it's created to be fought in a sport with rules with a referee, when the referee's gone, all of those skills mutate into something really ugly because I have seen so many really bad ground and pounds, and the dude's not angry. Oh, he's just on autopilot because that's what you do.
Yeah, that's one of the critical things about jiu-jitsu is obviously very little striking in any of the general jiu-jitsu, you know, centers or schools or academies or whatever. But of course, now more and more in the sporting world, they're trying to introduce some level of it. But at the same time, they don't just remove that because of the danger, but also they remove it because they try to keep it orientated towards sport. But then in jiu-jitsu, even without the pounding or the striking, like you learn to kill pretty quick.
Yeah.
Like once you learn how to choke someone and close the arteries to the brain, you're pretty much going to take someone out.
And if you're in a fight and it's your first fight and you're panicking and you don't realise what's going on, that can very quickly. And you see, that's the thing, because like the thing I find really interesting, just from watching fights in clubs for 30 years, I've seen really disciplined martial artists lose it because it's same but different.
Yeah.
But if in your head everything's been done in a ring with rules, that's the way. Like Bruce Lee talked about it a lot, is that the idea is that with martial arts, how can I explain it? They very much I lost my train of thought.
Well, for me, I've always seen it as just, always have enough awareness that you're never going to get to that point.
But you see, how can you, like, do you know why I'm so comfortable in a combat situation? Because I have broken up thousands of fights in the real world.
Yes.
Right? So I probably look at combat differently to because you see, my form of combat is control and make sure someone doesn't go headfirst through a glass window.
Yeah.
So I don't punch, I don't do that. But because was in most of my fights were in a nightclub environment, and if you don't stop a fight, it spreads in a club. Someone bumps against someone else. It's like those old saloon fights in the westerns,
Yeah.
So you've got
the chance for something like crazy to happen.
Dude, I've seen 4 people die with their heads hitting the ground. Just punch was fine, but they hit a table on the way down, And it's one of those things that the Bruce Lee thing. So that what happens is, instead of, if you, like, how I said before, if you can tell someone's done Muay Thai, you got a rough idea what's going on. Martial arts are systems, right? And so they have a certain set of strikes, and if you get to know what those strikes are, you can, like, it may not be spot on, but like if you're someone that's done just Aikido and someone comes at you with a flying knee, that's outside of your realm of experience.
It's outside your system.
And you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So the Bruce Lee thing was the Jeet Kune Do thing, is you travel from martial art to martial art and learn bits and pieces and learn about the martial arts, so that instead of, like, for example, I can't teach self-defense because my style is made for a 6'6" fat man with no ankles. So if I meet another 6'6", because it's got to do with understanding how my weight works and what my reach is, like, if I taught you my style, it would be completely useless because a lot of my style's using my bulk and knowing where I can take hits because I'm fat. I can take kidney hits better than most because I've got that much extra fat between me and my kidney. So if a guy's going to go for a kidney hit, I'll let it go so I can control the situation. And it's really, the martial arts thing's really fascinating because you get brown belt fever. Okay, I've talked about this before on the other podcast. You get to a point where you learn enough to be dangerous, but not enough to know what you're doing. And that's the point a lot of people leave martial arts, because that's when it feels best. Because once you get to that point, you essentially have to go back to white belt, and then that's what jiu-jitsu does.
That's right.
Go back to white belt and learn it again so that it gets rid of that. But most people, that's where they feel the toughest, and that's where they sit. And so when they're going out in the world, that's where they are. But you never know what anyone else has done. You never know if someone's carrying a knife,
That's right. We could dart across all manner of topics, which we will.
We will,
on each episode.
Yeah.
And I think we did pretty well for the first. I mean, we've still probably got more legs in us, but
let's just leave it there for now.
Yeah. I think we did pretty well.
We suck.
We do suck.
We're learning to this. But yeah, look, what we'll do is we'll probably do a thing on the Suns and what it is and what we do.
A little bit more detail.
Just a bit more detail to start getting the philosophy across. But what will happen is, I think what we'll do is, I've got the talking points I want to do for my book, and I think we'll do one of them an episode. Like they're my sort of 10 life rules.
Okay.
And we can use them as a basis for each episode there. And
it's a good introduction to you.
Oh, thank you,
because it is about you.
Yeah.
One Phat Teacher.
One Phat Teacher, yeah.
But yeah, that would be good. Bring in that. We'll sort of see where everything flows.
Mate, first one done and dusted. Thanks,
so
brother.
good.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll see you when we see you.
Thanks for listening. And what are we going to do with the podcast? We're going to get this up on YouTube.
Yeah. Yep.
It's not going to be on the Sun's side or what?
Yeah. I can set up links to it. So,
but what are we going to? We should say it'll be your channel.
Yeah. So it'll be on the Sun's page, the Sun's YouTube. Yeah. I'll share links. Probably join our Facebook or our Instagram. Sons of Obi-Wan AU on Facebook. Sons of Obi-Wan on Insta.
And we'll get this podcast episode, each of the episodes listed as a RSS feed. And
that's, I don't know. That's technical. I don't speak that.
We'll figure that out.
Yeah, but look, stick with us. We'll get there. It's always, everything's a bit weird at the beginning. We're just trying to, as I said, I think our biggest problem is we've got so much to talk about. We don't know where to start.
Yeah.
And make it cohesive and easy to understand. We'll work it out.
Yeah. And at the moment, it's going to be probably more audio orientated, but if you're watching, thanks for watching.
Thank you guys.
Yeah. But when we have more visual elements, we can edit those together with our visual takes.
We'll get it done. But all right, well guys, here starts the journey. We'll see how we go and hopefully you enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Catch you next time. Cheers guys. Bye.